Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. It has been a long time since I filmed a haul, as in it has been several months, though you've probably seen videos more recently than that since I've been working through a backlog. This is my first time filming a haul since I got a new dog, so I apologize if you hear any crying in the background. Her crate training is a work in progress. Today I'm going to be going through several dozen, I would say, McCalls patterns that are in sizes 14 and 16, and these are mostly from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, though there might be a couple 1960s patterns in there. There's one size 12, which is on top right here, and the majority of these came from a big lot I posted a video of me organizing. So I'll link that video in the description down below. It was my largest haul ever. I acquired over 800 patterns, I think, from that haul, and those are just the ones I decided to keep, not including these several hundred that I'm selling in lots on eBay. So it was a huge lot, and I sorted them all by brand and by size, and these are the ones I'm listing first, and these are the ones I'm going to share with you first. Now, at the time this video goes up, these should be listed, or I will at least know when they are going to be listed, and I'll have that information either down screen or in the comment section down below. Because these have already been listed, they are in plastic sleeves, so if the lighting seems a little bit different this one, it's because I have my overhead lights off just so there won't be as much glare. So on that note, let's get into these. I'm excited to share them. There are quite a few suit patterns in here, and right on top is one from the 1940s. This just described as a Mrs. two-piece suit dress, and I like this suit quite a lot. It's got a really lovely lightly flared skirt and then a tailored, very fitted jacket with a few different collar and sleeve options. I especially like this very wide collar. You don't usually see something like that on a suit jacket. You usually just see that on coats, and I find it to be an interesting detail. I also absolutely love this one. I was almost tempted to keep this for myself, but I decided not to. There's just something really striking about those tab details, and I think the slightly longer line of it makes it really flattering. I also love how you've got this peplum detail at the back of the jacket, as well as that tab detail that you see on the front, and that is actually mimicked in the skirt, which has the same seam lines that continue down for the jacket and also flares out in the back. So it's just a really beautiful, flattering design with a lot of attention to detail, so I hope it manages to find a good home. And I love the illustration on this and how they've chosen to style it. I'm probably not going to bother to mention it until I switch over to the size 14s, but the next several I'm going to show you are all size 16s for a 34-inch bust. This one is from the 1930s, and I actually have two copies of this available, which is really cool, because it's rare for me to come across 1930s patterns, much less ones with the exact same pattern number. But these are both for a really sleek dress that has these box pleated details at both the front and the back of the skirt. It's a relatively slimline skirt, as you see with the 1930s, and also what makes 1930s fashion horribly unflattering on me and my large hips. And then you've got a lightly sort of bloused bodice with some pin tuck details at the shoulder, or maybe it's an inverted box pleat detail, it's hard to tell. Then you've got that same pleated detail you see on the skirt at the sleeve, or you can do a long bishop sleeve. I really love the sleeve detail on this. I really like the collar. I just think it's a beautiful pattern, and if you're someone who likes the 30s and lucky enough to have the 30s flatter your figure, this would be a great one to add into your collection. The one with the good envelope has been used and is neatly folded. Then the one with the bad envelope is factory folded. Here's another 1930s one with some really interesting details. This one has a yoke and these huge sleeves. These have so many pleats at the head to really create a lot of volume and a very poofy sort of effect. And then the long sleeve version has a lantern effect, which means it has a seam right here to create that poof, as opposed to it being created with pleats or gathering. And speaking of pleats, there are pleats on the back of the skirt that are stitched down, and those actually have the same lines as pleats on the bodice, and those pleats go on the front of the bodice as well, though the front of the skirt does not have the pleats, so it creates that really slim line. And this has almost Raglan style sleeves that lead into the yoke. Really lovely design. Not one I was at all tempted to keep for myself, but I think it would be a lot of fun to make. It's neat seeing flouncy details like those poofy sleeves paired with the pleats. And here's a much softer ladies dress, again size 16, 34-inch bust. This one was used but in good condition if I recall correctly, and I really like this design. I especially like the option that's sleeveless. I just think the shape of the yoke would make that version very flattering, but I like that it comes with a long and a short sleeve version as well. It has a very simple, relatively sleek skirt with optional pockets, and then at the back it is shaped with darts, and it actually has a kick pleat at the hem, so you would have a good amount of mobility in it. And this has a tab button detail at the back of the yoke, and then there is a vent at the back of the dress to provide volume. This is an early 1940s pattern for some blouses, and I will zoom you in a little bit. So for this, you have pin tucked or pleated details at the front, and then a traditional lapel collar combo. It buttons down the front, and the buttons are spaced sort of interestingly just to create a little bit more of a detail, and then a separate piece at the shoulders, which I really like. I think it makes it more flattering. And it is shaped with gathers across the shoulders as opposed to pleats or pin tucks. This is a pajama set for the 1940s. It is super, super cute. You can make this pair of trousers or a pair of shorts. And you've got a dolman sleeve or cap sleeve crop tied top. I think this would be really cute as just a day ensemble with the crop top and the pair of high-waisted shorts. It reminds me of something you'd see like Taylor Swift wear a few years ago. Just really darling ensemble, whether it's for day wear or bedtime. Another 1940s pattern. This one has a pleated skirt with optional pockets. I really like how they have shown the pocket flaps with the contrasting stripe. I think that's really cool. The skirt has box pleats at the seams, and then it's got this interesting sort of long line v-neck yoke, and you can make this with or without a collar, and you can make it with long bishop or elbow length sleeves. This one is absolutely beautiful. I can't remember the condition of this. It has definitely been used just based on feeling it. I listed some of these several weeks ago, so I don't exactly remember all of their condition, but it is a beautiful dress that almost mimics the lines of a suit. The drop waist scallop shape, and then you've got a v-neck and dolman sleeves with some shirring at the top, and then the skirt is slightly gathered at the sides. And I really love how the shirring at the shoulders runs parallel to the gathers at the skirt. I just think it's really nice, and it really helps create that balanced silhouette that you see in a lot of 40s fashion. This is a 1950s pattern just for some simple shirts. You can make these with short or long sleeves. These have a lot of traditional menswear detailing in terms of the top stitching and the way the sleeves are done. And you've got these large patch pockets on the front as well, but it does have a more feminine, kind of interestingly cut flare collar, which I do like. This is the low in size 12 of the lot, and I'm not sure why it's here. This is factory folded and it's for a 32-inch bust, so it does have the slightly larger measurements from this period. And this is just a tailored dress with darts to fit the skirt and tucks at the waist, and it's got a wrap over effect and a collar with dolman sleeves that can either be elbow length or short. Now back to the size 16s. This one is for a late 30s or early 40s dress. This has a lightly flared skirt and a really interesting detail at the front, sort of like a double-breasted effect, but it does button down the center. You can make this with short puffed or long puffed sleeves. And this is not my favorite era in terms of accessories. I think the hats are like funny and small in proportion to the dresses, but it is a really lovely dress design. The illustration's quite cool. This one I absolutely love. I was tempted to keep it for myself, but I don't like wearing rompers to begin with. I'm not going to wear a romper underneath a dress. Like, imagine having to take off a dress to go to the bathroom and then take on your romper set underneath it. But it's a beautiful culotte style slip. So it is shorts, not a skirt, and it's got this really wide waistband and then this sweetheart neck that is fitted with tucks, and it's just a really beautiful ensemble. This would be so lovely for like a pinup style photo shoot or something, though I can't imagine wearing it. And I love the illustration. Ladies just look so attractive on it. I think it's great. And there's something quite interesting seeing them in this underwear, these foundation garments, and then having these high heels on. This is a suit. This one's a little bit more boring from the early 1940s, I would say. It's got an inverted box pleat at the front. It's relatively long line. It actually has pockets tucked into the shaping on the bodice, or on the jacket rather. It does not have a collar, and then it just buttons down the front. It has long sleeves. This dress I thought was a maternity dress at first, just because it is a choice gathering placement they've created, but I do actually really like the details of it. So it has this wrap style top, and then it's got these inserted panels on the sides that really taper it in and create a structured effect at the waist. And then the skirt is cut with the same lines down the side, but the front panel is gathered, and then there's gathering underneath the bust to provide volume there. This one is so fun. This one is factory folded and from the 1960s. It still has the same measurements, so for a 34-inch bust. And this is a drop waist dress with a super full skirt, and that fullness is mimicked at the bust, which is heavily gathered up at the top and the bottom to provide volume. You can make this with spaghetti straps, and those spaghetti straps are actually mimicked with banding details at various points. It has a little bowler or jacket to go with it. Just such a fun design. I'd love to see this made up in a silk or like a fun polka dot tulle or something. This one is factory folded, and I was tempted to keep it for myself just because it's so striking, but I really don't think I would make it. It's a relatively simple dress with a very full gored skirt, and it's got this really cool, very structured, very large collar, and you can make a dolman sleeve button front jacket to go with it. I just love that collar, especially with the stripes and the mitered corners. It's so striking, especially with the way they paired the stripes on the bottom of the skirt, so I like that one a lot, especially the illustration. And it is factory folded too. I don't remember if I said that. This is a dolman sleeve dress with some gathers at the front and a very full full skirt. This is another cute one I was tempted to keep for myself, but I just don't think I would get around to making it. You've got wing cuffs and a wing collar to match, and it's just such a lovely proportion, very classic 1950s dress. It's a great size, and it is factory folded as well. This is the last pattern I've actually followed on my other channel before as part of a little Sewing Through the Decades series where I followed vintage patterns, and this one is from the 1950s, of course. It has a few different color options, so you can have this sort of draped bow detail, you can have a higher cravat detail, or you can do this little tie, buttons down the front, and it's relatively long line, so it's actually really great for tucking into things, and it is shaped with tucks at the waist. Another suit here with some really interesting details. It's got a long, relatively fitted skirt, and it's got a fitted detail right here, and then gathers extend out from that, and those lines are actually mimicked at the shoulder, which has a similar detail, and gathers extending out from it as well. And then you have a collar and it buttons down the front. It's just a really lovely design. I love the attention to detail with it. This is another amazing design that I was tempted to keep for myself, but I just don't think I would end up making. It's a very full pleated skirt, and then you've got this sort of fitted waistband and gathers extending out from that, and then it buttons to the collar. Just a lovely, lovely design, and factory folded, which is always nice to see. You know what? I was going to film the other half of this and show you all the size 14 patterns, but it is getting very toasty in here, so I'm going to take a break and then I'll be back to show you those. Alright guys, I'm back and now it's time to go through all of the size 14s. So unless I specify otherwise, the rest of the ones in this video will be for a 32-inch bust. Right on top here we have an amazing 1940s suit pattern. You've got a relatively slim, very simple skirt that's just shaped with a few darts. Then you have this jacket which almost looks like a men's military jacket, buttons down the front and then fits tightly at the waist. It has the cutest little collar and patch pockets. So I'm a big fan of this pattern just for that jacket alone. This one is from the 1930s and it's got some cool details. It has really interestingly shaped sleeves. So this one sort of puffs out. It has a lot of volume at the elbow, whereas this one is sheared and sort of wraps around the arm. It's got a little V-neck and optional decorative buttons at the front and then shearing over the shoulders to create shape. This has a slightly more flared skirt than the other 1930s designs we've seen today. And the skirt isn't shaped with darts or anything, it just has a few seams and appears to be cut on the bias to really form over the hips. This is another late 30s, early 40s suit pattern, and this is pretty simple with just a lightly flared D-length skirt and then a tailored jacket that is fitted with darts, and it's a double-breasted jacket too, which is a nice little detail. And again, the proportions of the hats to shoulder ratio is a little odd here, but it is a lovely design nonetheless. This is from a similar period, so I like 1939 if I had to guess, though I haven't looked it up, and this is just a blouse pattern. These are some very blousy over blouses, which means it's got a lot of volume above the waist. And the waist is cinched in with almost like a belt to create a really defined waistline over top of a skirt as opposed to having it tuck in. And this just buttons down the front and has lightly puffed sleeves and a really cool collar. Next up are some 1950s designs, and these ones are factory folded. This is for a really lovely, very full flared dress. It has little cap sleeves that are actually raglan sleeves, so instead of having a traditional arm side, they're inserted into an angle on the bodice, and that almost creates the effect of mitered corners, so you could have the stripe design match up on the sleeves if you wanted, and it has a square neckline. And this one is factory folded, if I forgot to say that. This one's factory folded as well, and I've sold a copy of this before. I think it was in a larger size. It's a really cute button front house style dress. It's got seams that go from the shoulder all the way to the hem, so it really helps lengthen the figure despite having a relatively wide silhouette. I really love the shape of this and just the tiny little lace details they've added around the collars and the cuffs and the pockets. This is a swimsuit pattern, and I believe this was unused and uncut, but I did unfold it to count the pieces. This is for a square neck short style swimsuit, so it actually has little shorts built in as opposed to a more modern bikini cut. And then it also has this poncho or cover up to go with it, and it's just a really cool design. I always love swimsuit patterns just because they're so stylish and so different to what we wear in modern times. This is just a suit pattern from the early 1950s. You've got a relatively slim cut pencil skirt and then a tailored jacket with all of these dart details. It actually has sort of a scallop detail going around the hem and lapel as well. And then it pleats over top of the arm side, and you can make this with elbow length or short sleeves. This is for a really cool, very fitted dress, probably from the late 50s, early 60s. And this is a convertible dress. Actually, no, they call it a Mrs. Dress and accessories. So it has all of these optional accessories you can add to make the dress more interesting. So on its own, it's just a fitted dress with some dart details and some inserted pockets. And then it has this sort of tab detail around the collar or the neckline. You can outline that tab detail further with this little optional collar. You can also do a high neck collar that attaches to the buttons at the neckline. You can create a dicky with the lapel to go underneath it, or a little poncho or capelet to go over top of it. So lots of options with that one, and I believe this was factory folded. This is a cute little early 1950s dress. It is a lightly flared skirt. I actually really love the shape of this skirt. And it's got a scoop sort of notched collar neckline with cap dolman sleeves, and it has a little jacket or bolero that goes with it. And I love the illustration on this one. I just think the colors are really vibrant and fun. This is another dolman sleeve dress, though this is more of a traditional shirtwaist style dress. It buttons all the way down the front. It's got this interesting sort of standing collar with a little bow detail at the front. And again, I really like the fabrics they've chosen for this. I think the pink polka dot is just a delight. And I believe this one is factory folded, and it is probably from the late 1950s, I would say. This one is also factory folded, and this is a drop waist dress with a scoop neckline or a high collared neckline and little cap sleeves that are cut in one with the bodice. It's got a very, very full drop waist pleated skirt, which is just lovely. And this is actually a teen size, but it has the same measurements as a traditional woman's size 14. And it's really, really cute. Drop waist designs are not flattering on me. I don't have any of them in my personal stash, but I do like seeing them just because it's a bit different and has that very iconic, very full 1950s silhouette with a bit of a twist to it. This is just a early 1950s or late 40s pajama set pattern. This has trousers and then a button front jacket or top. Not a lot going on here. This has been used before, if I recall correctly, but I do believe it was complete. I like the illustration on this a lot. There's just something quite simple but lovely about it. And I feel like the proportions on these bodies are a little bit more realistic than you usually see, which is nice as well. I think this pattern is factory folded, though the envelope has seen better days. This is quite similar to another McCalls pattern we saw, except this has a much slimmer skirt line. It's probably from the late 40s or early 50s. But it again has that really wide square neckline and collar with the mitered corners, which makes it amazing for striped prints. But instead of continuing all the way around to the center back, it ends at the base of the shoulders and accentuates the fact that this is a really low back dress, which I imagine makes it quite breezy and comfortable for summer, and is also just a really nice detail that you don't usually see. And what I love about this the most is since the collar isn't continuous on the back, you can actually have a back closure, which is just so much easier and more convenient than the side zippers that dresses tend to favor during this period. If I recall correctly, this pattern is incomplete, but it's still just so cool and very unique. I'll zoom you in just a little tiny bit. So it's got dolman kimono style sleeves, but they're cut very, very wide, and then they're shearing at the top of the shoulder to kind of keep it on the shoulder. It's got a basque waist at the back and an inverted box plate, and then it wraps around at the front, and it has this beautiful draped detail, which is just gorgeous. They describe this as a ladies and Mrs. Hostess dress, and I'm not entirely sure what that means. I guess it's like a fancy house dress, but it's also sort of like a robe. And they've shown in the illustration this paired with some jewelry, which makes it look a little bit dressier. But I just love that, how it looks like something you could wear getting out of the shower, but I also feel like you could make this out of a silk charmeuse and have it be a beautiful evening gown. So it's a very versatile pattern, really neat. This is one of the many blouse patterns I'm going to go through very quickly. This is the earliest of them from the 1940s. This just buttons down the front. It has a tuck over the shoulder and tucks at the waist, and then a little bow tie detail at the base of the neck. I actually really, really like this pattern. This is the type of very simple pattern that I would keep in my stash just because it's something that I make and wear on a very regular basis. Now I'm going to go through these very quickly because I don't remember if they were part of this lot or another lot. I know some of them were from another lot and will probably be featured in another video. That lot was primarily Vogue patterns, so I've decided that I'm going to list the Vogue patterns on their own and list the McCalls ones now, which is why I wanted to show you them in this video, just sort of as a preview. But I do apologize in advance for any repetition you see in future hauls if some of these do pop up again. I guess we'll just start with this one. It's one of my favorites. If this was in a larger size, I would keep it. It's just a dolman or cap sleeve blouse. Very, very simple. You can make this with or without a collar. The collar it does include is really cool and very, very large, and then it buttons down the back, and the collar doesn't continue around the center back, so you can have that button detail, and it's fitted with tucks at the waist. I believe this one is factory folded. It is from the 1950s, whereas the other one was probably from the late 40s. This can be either an overblouse and worn over top of a skirt or tucked in, so it does have darts that keep it really fitted below. It's got an interesting sort of tab neckline detail that can fold out into a collar, and this can have either a mandarin collar or a fold out lapel, and you can make this with short or elbow length sleeves. I really like this one. It has an off the shoulder arm size, so you can actually make it without sleeves and have sort of a cap sleeve dolman sleeve effect, or you can make it with these long bishop sleeves with cuffs fitted at the wrist, and this just buttons down the front. It has a really nicely proportioned collar. Another one that if it was in my size I'd be tempted to keep just because it's the simple type of blouse pattern that I really would get a lot of wear out of. This is a raglan sleeve collared blouse pattern with wing cuffs. Buttons down the front is intended to be tucked in. Very simple, very nice, and I believe this one is factory folded as well. I love this one as well. If this was in my size, I would definitely keep it. I feel like I've said that a lot. It's got a yoke, and I love how they've used a contrasting material for it in this version. You can make this with short or elbow length sleeves, and you can have fitted cuffs or wing cuffs, and it buttons down the front. Just a really darling design. I like it a lot, and I just love the contrast of this. So definitely one I will be keeping an eye out for in my size, but this one I am going to sell, and I believe this is factory folded. And then lastly is this one, which is so cool. This is factory folded. The illustration is just so vibrant and lovely. This is intended to be a sheer over blouse, which you don't see very often. And it's got this beautiful petal style collar and cuffs, and then it has some floral embroidery that you can put on these tucked portions. So it's just a really, really neat pattern. It's great to see it in this condition with the transfers included, still in its factory folds and everything. And that is it. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, this little preview at some of the patterns I will be listing throughout the week. If I know the exact dates and times these are going up, I will have them down below or on the screen right now. But definitely follow my Instagram for shop previews and shop updates, as well as follow my shop on Etsy so you'll be notified when new listings go live. If you enjoyed this video, then you should subscribe and stay tuned because I have a lot more pattern hauls coming in the future. Thanks so much for your support, and I will talk to all of you very soon.